right, well, Jake, I'm going to invite you to come on up, man. And let's give Jake a round of applause. So, brother, I'm excited for you, and I'm glad I didn't wear my T-shirt as well, because then you'd be comparing us, and I would lose that comparison. So I'm just going to let Jake model it well. All joking aside, I'm really excited and encouraged about everything God's been doing in your life. And so I asked Jake, I gave him a couple questions just to think about as he shared. And I just want to encourage you, and some of you have been through this. As I look around the room, I know many of you have had this experience where there's no biblical mandate to share your testimony before you get baptized, but we just believe that it's a great practice because it benefits the church, and it's a blessing for those of you that are followers of Jesus. You're incredibly encouraged to hear how Jesus has been working in Jake's life. It's that mutual encouragement we talked about last week, and it's also an opportunity for those of you who have not yet taken that step of baptism to hear and be encouraged by the way that God has led Jake to that point as well. So I'm just going to hand it over to him. I'm going to let him share what God has laid on his heart, and then we're going to have the privilege of watching him be baptized.
So take off my mask. How's everybody doing today? Good. If you don't know me already, my name's Jake. I wrote down a couple of these notes here just because I didn't want to get up here and get nervous or something and forget one of my thoughts. If you don't already know me, I am family with Dave and Kai, who have been close members of the church for quite some time now. So really, growing up, my parents raised me in the Catholic Church so they really, I'm thankful that they started that journey of faith in my life. They kind of planted that in me until about the third grade, and then my parents separated, and we all kind of got away from our faith a little bit. And growing up in a broken household for the past 13 years, it was definitely, I've experienced a lot of trauma. And I watched my mom struggle in a new relationship after my dad. Sorry. And looking back now, I think Jesus showed me these were times where I definitely could have leaned on him a lot, but instead I kind of built up like a shield. I didn't want to get emotional, but doing it this way, I actually succeeded a lot, which was the weird part. So I kind of I guess in a sense, without realizing it, I was putting myself before God because I wasn't really giving him the glory. I was kind of I'm doing so great, succeeding, graduating, almost top of my class, went to college, did great. Didn't face too much struggle, thinking that I was doing it on my own when really it was Jesus putting in the works behind the scenes, but I didn't really give him the credit that I should have. So the ideas of myself started to get bigger and bigger, and I definitely had issues with being full of myself that I didn't really notice at that point. And then, thankfully, to my beautiful girlfriend, Vanessa, when we started dating, I started getting back into my faith a little bit, going back to the Catholic Church a little bit. But I still didn't really know God or Jesus in my life as a one-to-one relationship. And then I started coming to Riverside, thankfully to Dave, and I started to get sort of a better idea of who Jesus was, but I was still kind of really hoping that I would get that closer relationship with him. And turns out I was still just being stubborn and prideful, and I didn't get to really know him in my life as somebody that I could talk to and approach to that was customized and designed for me. And I knew of Jesus and all the beautiful things that he's done in the people around me and the lives that he's changed in people around me. But like I said, I was still just struggling. And as time went on, I found myself in a position a few months ago where Jesus was testing my loyalty to him and to the people that I love, that he placed in my life that are really meaningful people, especially Vanessa. And I failed that test. I was selfish, and that selfishness led me to a feeling of emptiness and lostness that I've never experienced in my life before. And my unloyalness in my relationship with Vanessa and Jesus definitely, it rocked me really hard. I went from being so full of myself, and then Jesus, like he always does, if we get like that, he humbled me so quick. I never, I guess, knew that the true definition of humble until I was humbled in that moment, and just grounded in my sin. And I was ashamed to really do anything. The anxiety was really just like really overwhelming. I couldn't really do any of my homework. I had no motivation to work out, and people that know me closely, they know I work out like a maniac, so that was like different. And I didn't really have an appetite. I couldn't really eat full meals for a few days. I probably cried more in a week than I did in the past 10 years of my life. My sister was there for me a lot, especially Dave and Kai and all these amazing people that God and Jesus really surrounded me with. I wasn't suicidal, but I did think of it to the point where I could relate to people that have or wanted to do it, because I just couldn't imagine living the rest of my life like this. Thankfully, Jesus strategically placed amazing people in my life that helped me through these moments. And through these people, they always turned me towards Jesus. They didn't really talk about themselves. I know I annoyed Dave and Kai probably a lot, because my anxiety would be so bad at home. I just would pack up my bags and just leave for a few days, and I would just go to their house. And they always just kept turning me to Jesus. They were just every single time. They never talked about themselves. They just talked about what he could do for my life. It was never like what they could do for my life. And at this point, I started to understand my need for Jesus. I couldn't just forgive myself and move on, and I felt that even if Vanessa and I never got back together, I'd still have holes inside of me that couldn't be filled any other way. So I really just had nothing left. I was lost, and doing it on my own didn't work. And Jesus showed me a small glimpse of how much worse it could get if I chose otherwise. And I could tell just by the weight of my sin that this dark path it wouldn't end just if I was just like, all right, I'm just going to forgive myself and just turn things around. And so I went wholeheartedly to Jesus for the first time in my life, because I couldn't handle the weight of the sin anymore. And ever since I made that decision, I feel like nothing has been the same in my life, but in an amazing way. Jesus began to give me strength in ways that I always needed, and he helped me give up bad habits that if you asked me 6 months ago that I would stop doing or stop pursuing, I would have said that you're crazy. And even though I feel so unworthy of being saved and forgiven, Jesus was there for me anyway. And he assured me of this as my anxiety slowly started to go away, and I was able to sort of get back to feeling normal again, but a different type of normal. And some days I still wake up and feel trapped in my past failures, and my anxiety set in again. But now having this faith, knowing Jesus is there for me, just changes everything. I know he is always there to help me defeat my anxiety before I let it consume me. And when the present day seems too much, I actually really love this piece that I got from a devotional this week. It said, "It is key to remember what God has done for us in the past and how he never left us. When we remember him and his faithfulness, it encourages us to push through whatever we may face. It gives us an anchor through every storm." And this, for me, was just huge, because I feel like the world is so distracting, and I can just lose track of things very easily, and it's a very thin line that you can just slip back into your old ways, and into my old ways. And when I get in those moments where I wake up, I don't feel like doing anything, or my anxiety is just driving me crazy, I just think back to how low I was at that point, and Jesus was there for me, so faithful that it encourages me and helps me get through. And just there's ways that I can get through my anxiety now, whereas before it was just like I would just put it all on my back and just try and do it all myself, and that didn't work out at all. And another thing I struggle with is just I let the past creep in and define my journey and my faith now. But that same devotional that Jesus led me to said this: although our past never goes away, he helps us heal those wounds. Therefore, it is possible for us to bear our battle scars, yet wear the victor's crown through Jesus. And this to me was just, there's no way to really describe that. I feel like I'm not trying to hide. Like before, I was just so ashamed of myself that I was scared to like even go to the store or something like that, because I didn't want somebody to see me that I knew, because just that's the way that my sin made me feel. But now I'm not really ashamed of what I've done, because I feel like my greatest challenges are actually like a way for me to be, I guess God has showed me, or Jesus has showed me, to be proud of that, because in despite of all that mess, like it turned out to be the greatest blessing that I've ever experienced. And that's exactly what Jesus has helped me do today. And I think that faith in my life now, there's just new meanings for life, and especially with fulfillment. I feel like I would wake up every day before trying to seek fulfillment in areas that only Jesus could fill my life, whether it was through my relationship and what we had with me and Vanessa before, or waking up and going to the gym. Like I would look to all these different things, or like a conversation with Dave or something, where I would try and use these things to fulfill me, but really it's only Jesus that could fulfill those areas in my life. There wasn't a special, perfect person on earth that could really say something or give me something that was going to fulfill that area. I would always, and I didn't realize how tired I was until this all happened. I was able to just finally, I guess, just see that and feel how tired I was, tired of always just restlessness. I wanted to travel and like do all these things, and I still want to do them all now, but it's just for different reasons, where before I was just chasing all these things all the time, and it just was never enough. It was just like an endless cycle. And it makes me think of this song by Elevation Worship called Graves into Gardens, where in the beginning he talks about searching the world, but it couldn't fill me. And that song just means so much to me, because I would get so lost in trying to fill myself in the materialistic world that like all these things are great and everything, but they just didn't mean anything without Jesus in my life, now that he's the one that's fulfilling me. And I'm just grateful and happy to be standing up here today and taking these first steps in my journey. I remember it was probably like 2 years ago, Anthony was up here. I'm not sure if he's here today or not, but he was giving his testimony, and I remember just seeing how amazing and powerful it was. And I knew that I wasn't ready. I wanted to get baptized, but I just wasn't ready at that time. I didn't know that I would go through all this stuff to get here. But I am just happy that I can finally stand up here today and say that Jesus is working in my life, and I'm finally taking the first beginning steps to pursuing him.
Man, that's awesome, Jake. You said everything so well. Did a really great job. You can actually slide down and you can start to get ready if you ready to take the plunge. And as you do that, Just want to share just two quick thoughts. I told him I might have some follow-up questions for him, but he did such a great job of expressing it that, man, I think you got to hear his story really well. And my hope is that maybe there's somebody sitting out here, like he was sitting there when Anthony shared his testimony, that maybe God's stirring in your heart, like, hey, I need to do that. This is time for me. He experienced what some people would call a fortunate fall, right? It's a sin, it's a failure that you would never choose for yourself, and you wouldn't do it again. And yet you can see how God used that failure. It's like the prodigal son in the pigsty, right? Reaching a point. Careful, Jake, you might be right in front of the camera. I don't know. So, man, this is an Ebenezer moment for him, right? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, right? This is where he's raising his stone of Ebenezer. He's going to remember this date. He's going to remember this time. He's going to remember this, and this is a mile marker in his life of when he publicly professed. And you know how hard it is to get up and stand and talk in front of people. And so he came up here and shared not only his highlight reel, but he shared his failures with you. And so, man, I honor that. The last thing I just want to mention is what a beautiful picture of, there's this Greek word called oikos, and it's not just yogurt that John Stamos sells, but it's your household, right? It's your community, and to see how discipleship makes its way through community, and to see how Kyra was faithful in bringing Dave to church, and as Dave came to find Jesus, he told Jake about it, right? And shortly after Dave and Kai started coming, a couple months later, there was 3 rows of people here that was their friends and their family and their cousins and their coworkers, because they couldn't wait to tell Jesus. That's Jesus' strategy for reaching the world, right? You are his strategy. You each have your own oikos, your own community that you are uniquely positioned to reach, and so share what you've got. And so I'm going to have the privilege of baptizing Jake. I'm just going to tell you right now, Keith, take your time, preach your sermon. This is good. Don't feel time pressure. We got all the time in the world. So we're going to transition down here to the tub, and we're going to have the opportunity to witness Jake getting baptized. And when he's baptized, I want you guys to clap and cheer for him, because this is a day of celebration. Step right in. And then just slide forward so you have space to go back. Jake's an athlete. We should have put ice in here, made this a cold tub for him, right? Get his cryo in. Well, Jake, man, your testimony was a beautiful picture of what God does in the lives of someone who's willing to submit to him. And so it's based on your profession of faith in Jesus Christ that I now baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.